Welcome to a new episode of the Python tutorial series. Today will be the last episode on NumPy, where we will look at how to generate random numbers in series. In next week's episode, we will learn how to create our own custom functions. So make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so you don't miss out. If you've missed any of my previous tutorials on the NumPy library, you should check those out first by clicking on the box in the top right-hand corner of your screen. Now though, let's move on with today's tutorial. In order to generate and process random numbers using NumPy, today we will use a portion of the NumPy library called random. We can access it by saying import numpy.random as R. Now the first function we will look at today is used to generate a random number between 0 and 1 using a uniform distribution. This is called r.rand, and we can give it any shape array we like. So if we want to generate a single number, we will just say 1. But say we want to create a 2 by 2 matrix, then we will give it 2, 2, and that will generate a 2 by 2 matrix where each element has been randomly sampled from the uniform distribution between 0 and 1. Now the second function we will look at is very similar to the first, except that it doesn't sample the numbers from a uniform distribution, but rather uses a normal distribution. So, can anyone guess what it's called? Take a guess and write it in the comments. Now let's see if you've guessed. It is of course r.rand, like before, but rand n, where n stands for normal. So like before, we can say 1, and that will give us a single number, a single random number, or r.randn 2, 2 will give us a random 2 by 2 matrix. You can see here that there's one number which is negative and one number which is greater than 1, because of course, as you all know, the normal distribution is not limited between 1 and minus 1, but rather goes from minus infinity to plus infinity, and therefore we can have negative numbers and we can have numbers that are greater than 1. Now what if, instead of generating numbers with decimal points, you wanted to just generate integer numbers? Well, that can easily be done with NumPy random by typing r.rand int, where int stands for integer. Now in this case, it will take a single argument, which is of course an integer number, say 10. Now what this represents is the higher limit of the interval from which the numbers will be sampled. So in this case, the sampling interval will be between 0 and 10. So if we press enter, you will see that in this case it generates the number 4. If we press it again, it will give us 2. If we press it again, it will give us 4 again. But this can be any number between 0 and 9. Now, what if we want to give it a different interval to choose from, say between 20 and 100? Well, we can do that by specifying 2 arguments within the function. So we can say r.randint, and then in this case the first argument will be the lower end of the interval, so say 20, and then the second variable will be the upper end of the interval, say 100. So in this case, it will keep giving us, as you can see, random numbers between 20 and 100. As I'm sure you've noticed, here we've been generating only a single number, whereas with the other functions we could generate a whole array of numbers. We can do this also with randint by saying r.randint and then specifying the interval, let's say again 20 to 100, and then the third argument within the function will be called size, and this will be the number of elements we want. So say a 2 by 2 matrix. And as you can see, it's given us a 2 by 2 matrix where each element has been sampled between 20 and 100. Now, up until now, we've looked at functions that generate random values. But what if all we want to do is simply select random elements from an array we already have? Well, we can do that quite easily with numpy.random. So in order to do it, let's again import numpy.random as R, but this time we will also import numpy as np. Let's now generate our own array of numbers, call it A, and call it numpy.array of, let's say, the numbers between 1 and 9. Now, having done that, we can now select random elements from this array by calling r.choice of A, so in this case the array, and now we have to specify how many elements we want to choose. Let's say we want to choose 5 elements. So this will give us 5 elements chosen at random from this array. Now, as you can see, there's a small problem with this. Some numbers have been selected more than once. In this case, the 1 and the 9 have been selected twice. Why is this? Well, this occurs because the choice function does not eliminate a number from the original array after it has been selected. So basically, it can choose the same number over and over again. And this is what has occurred in this case. So what can we do about this? Well, luckily, there's an extra argument inside the choice function which allows us to circumvent this problem. And in particular, we can do this by saying r.choice of A, 5, like before, but then we say replace equals false. Now, what this does is it prevents the function from reinserting the element back into the array after it has been chosen. So in other words, once a number's been selected, it gets discarded from the array. And this prevents a number from being selected more than once. So as you can see, it will now generate an array of numbers, and these numbers will all be different. And we can repeat this over and over again, and it will make no difference. The numbers will always be different. Now this brings us to the end of our brief overview of numpy.random functions. But before you go, let me share with you 2 functions which are within the NumPy library, which are really useful for saving and reading files. In particular, if we import numpy as np, as usual, we can then say A as an array is equal to numpy.array of, once again, 1, 2, 3, 4 up until 9. And then let's say we want to save this array to a file. We can do that by saying numpy.save, and then we give it the name of the file we want to save. So let's say our first saved array, and then we have to give it the file extension. The file extension for NumPy files is npy. After having done that, we have to tell the function which array we want it to save. In this case, the array A. We can then press enter, and that will have saved our array to the file called our first saved array.npy. If we now want to read the array from that file, we can say np.load, and then we have to give it the name of our file. So our first saved array.npy. And as you can see, that has read the array that was contained in that file, which in this case is an array containing the numbers from 1 to 9. Now with that, we have reached the end of today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you next week, where we will be talking about custom functions. Now this is a really important topic for any coding language, so make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the video. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the Python tutorial series. And in the meantime, make sure to like and share this video. I wish you a great week and happy coding!